Wonderful, amazing job today. I'm going to start off with saying something. I'm glad everybody came out to still hear the word this morning. I'm expecting to I know I have a word from God for someone today, and for the church as a whole also. But Pastor told me before he left, he said, I'm so glad that we're live streaming now, because my goal is to be sitting on the beach watching the live stream. So if you see a picture of a live stream on a beach in Mexico, it's probably our pastor. That being said, let's remember them in our prayer as they travel home this week and all of that, to keep them safe and to keep them together. And they're out celebrating their 30th anniversary, and I'm so happy for them. And so just remember them in their prayers as they're out traveling and having a good time. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about real quick is since I have the microphone, I can put in a plug for an announcement for myself, I guess. But our move on Saturday night, this is the launch of our men's ministry. If you're a man, or you have a son, or you're a man and you have an enemy, I don't care who it is, we need all the men we can to be here Saturday night. I have an amazing word that's going to be short, probably about 15 to 20 minutes long, but it's going to be powerful. It's what I feel the Lord is leading us as men of River Life into. And I'm just looking forward to that word. And I'm going to try to stay out of it as He's given me another word. But what He gave me today, the title of it is Accept the Assignment. I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago, a lot of y'all know that I was able to go down to Louisiana to assist. And how many of you, the Lord has put something on your heart to do, but you take that assignment and you give it a selfish reason? I hear a lot of crickets. I must be the only one that does that type of stuff. But I know that sometimes we do stuff and we have a selfish reason for it. And the Lord can still speak to us out of that. And I went down to Louisiana and I had a selfish reason. I really did. I'm not going to say what my selfish reason was, but I remember I was sitting there the second day, or actually it was the first day, and I was mudding drywall for a church that had been completely destroyed. They had already put the drywall up to the 4-foot mark, and so we were just laying mud in, and I got to thinking about Noah, which is where we're going to be talking out of today, about the floods. And all of a sudden the Lord spoke this word inside of me. And He told me, I have this word for churches. Because it's a needed word. A lot of times we look at the assignments that He gives us and we put them into our own criteria. We put them into our own area. We put it into our own agenda. But we have to know what His agenda is as He gives us an assignment. And sometimes that's where we kind of have a hard time. How do we figure out how we're supposed to properly deal with the assignments that the Lord gives us? I'm going to start reading, and I'm going to kind of skip around. But if you could, just open up your Bible to Genesis 6, verse 13 is where I'm going to start reading here in just a minute. But we look at our assignments that the Lord gives us, and a lot of times we look at the assignments of the past. And whenever I went down there, I kept wanting to talk about the tornado. They don't care about the tornado. That was in 2013. They wanted to talk about the flood, just like in 2013 as a church, we wanted to talk about the tornado. People were coming out to help us. And so we've got to keep our assignments in check. We don't need to forget them, but we need to grow from them and allow the ability to move. Just like Pastor we had that great meeting that we had actually really good attendance out of a couple weeks ago where he gave the new vision of the church that we have set the pace. Now we need to exceed the pace. We need to move forward. We need to increase. We need to take it from one gear to the next gear. And as we do that, we have to learn exactly what we're doing and how the Lord wants us to deal with it. I'm going to start reading real quick, Genesis 6, verse 13. And the Lord said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the water. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch." We're going to skip ahead to chapter 7, verse 1 real quick. Then the Lord said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in all this generation." And now we're going to skip ahead once more to chapter 8, verse 15. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you." If you noticed, all of these were assignments that God gave Noah. And Noah had to do something with each one of these assignments, because they had to come in a certain order. And often when God gives us an assignment, He tells us, "Hey, you know what? This is what your assignment is," and all of a sudden we want to do more with it. Okay, Lord, I know the assignment you have for me right now, but what is it going to be 2 years from now? We want to press ahead to get all the information we can, but God can't give it to us. Because God is at a point to where if He gave us so much information, we wouldn't want to do it. I remember it sitting back in my living room, and some of y'all remember this, little bits and pieces. You know of my life with this, but I was sitting in my living room in 2013. And the Lord kind of spoke to me as I was in prayer for our youth and for everything, because at that time I was the children or the youth minister. But I was in prayer, and all of a sudden the Lord spoke to me, "You're going to retire." I didn't know what to do with that. I was in the Air Force. I was at 18 years, and I looked at Him and said, "Lord, I'm in the military. It's 20 years or bust. So it's going to be 2 years." And He said, "No, you're about to retire." And lo and behold, a month later, the Air Force offered me an early retirement. He already knew what He had planned. He already knew what He had destined. He already knew each and everything that would come out all the way to 2016, that whenever I look back, I finally realized why He told me to retire and all the headaches I've gone through. But we've got to take the assignments He has and be prepared for them. And the way we get prepared for our assignments is the first thing we have to do is we have to be receptive to what He's telling us. We have to be receptive to the assignment that He's placing on our lives. And in order to be receptive, we have to be connected to Him to receive the calling or the assignment that He's putting on our lives. We look at it all the time, and we try to figure out, okay, well, how am I receptive to this stuff? By staying in this. Because when we're inside of this book, He reminds us as we're walking or as we're praying or as we're hanging drywall in Louisiana. I didn't have a Bible right beside my trowel. But he spoke the words of Noah to me. He started speaking the story to me and kind of explaining little bits and pieces of what happened. Here Noah was sitting inside of wherever he was at. He had a newborn son, because we look back at it and we see that whenever the Lord had given him these words, his sons were born, but we know he was told to build the ark when he was, or whenever he had known about 100 years, thereabouts, give or take. And his oldest son was 99 whenever they sailed. So that tells me that not only did he have to convince his wife, he had to convince his sons. I don't know about you, but I think it would be kind of hard if the Lord told me to do something completely strange like that. Hey, Kathy, you know what? The Lord's going to give us everything we need, but I'm about to build this big, huge boat in the backyard. She would look at me like I was nuts. The people I work with would think I'm nuts. People all around would think I'm nuts. We look at the Evan Almighty. Everybody, some of us have seen that movie. If you hadn't, I'm sorry. It's kind of an interesting movie. And the only reason why I say that is because I picture that for Noah. I picture people taking vacations to go see this crazy guy that's building a boat outside of his house. But he had to be receptive to the call of God. He had to be receptive to the assignment to say, okay, you know what? This is that next step. This is that next area that we've got to go. And in order to be receptive to it, we have to be patient. In Romans 12:12, it says, rejoice in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing in steadfast prayer. Whenever he gives us an assignment, we have got to be patient. Because all too often, we want to get ahead of ourselves. We want to get ahead of the game. We want to get ahead of the next person. We want to get ahead of everything else. And we want to do what we want to do here and now. As I've told the youth and people all the time, we live in a microwave world with a crock pot God. We do. But sometimes we have to be patient. We have to be steadfast in our prayer, because when we're steadfast in our prayer, He's able to speak to us. He's able to help us into the places that He has. He's able to talk to us. And even though we're in steadfast prayer, it doesn't mean we talk all the time. We have to be silent sometimes. We have to be quiet, because it's that still small voice that we long to hear, that whenever He finally speaks a word to us, it gives us the clarity we need to continue the assignment that He has. We have to look for it. We have to dig in deep for it. We have to be patient. We look at Noah, and here's a guy that it took him years and years and years to build this boat. And we look at it and we know that it had its time. And we know all the little bits and pieces. I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to skip to different areas of the ark as we go through this. Is that all right with you? But as he was on that boat, a lot of people look at the ark and they look at the story and they see certain things. It rained 40 days and 40 nights. He sent out the raven and the dove. The dove came back. And so God said, okay, well, we'll give it 7 more days. He sent him out 7 days later, came back. Okay, sent him out 7 days later, the bird didn't come back. But everybody just assumes, and they miss the other portions there. After he sent out that bird the last time, God still did not tell him to open the doors and for him and his wife to get out, and his kids. When he sent out that bird the last time, it was on the 601st year, 1st month, 1st day. God gave him the clearance to get out the 2nd month and the 25th day. So he had to wait another 70, or it was the 27th day, because he had to wait another 77 days before he opened up. I don't know why that is, but can you imagine that patience? Here's a man, his wife, and his 3 boys and their wives, and they're stuck on this ark for over a year. Over a year. That would drive me insane. I don't know about you, but I would have a hard time being patient at that point and waiting that next 77 days to be able to let the animals and myself out. But he did it. We have got to have patience when things come forth. Whenever God gives us that word, we have to be patient in it. We have to be prayerful of it. There's one thing that a lot of people say, man, don't pray for patience. And it's true, because whenever you pray for patience, what's God give you? He gives you a reason to be patient. So you have to be careful how you're doing these things. But you have to be patient and give him the glory in everything. I picture Moses or Noah, because he's so connected with God that he was the one that was chosen. His family was the ones that was chosen. And what's the first thing he did when he got off the ark? He built an altar for the Lord. He gave a sacrifice for the Lord. Personally, I think that's for out of gratitude. Thank you for letting me get off this boat, Lord. But he did it for more than that. He did it because he loved God. Because he wanted to give him the glory for what had happened. He had lost his best friends. He had lost his parents. He had lost his brothers and sisters. He had lost everybody but his immediate family. But he still was able to get off the ark and give thanks to God. How many of us would be willing to do something like that in an assignment that he gives us that sometimes doesn't make sense? The next thing that we've got to do when accepting an assignment from God is we've got to be watchful. We have to be watchful around us. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. We've got to be watchful with the assignments God gives us. Because God speaks to each and every one of us about our assignments. He doesn't speak to Julie about the assignments on Kathy and I's life. He doesn't speak to Pastor Garvey over the exact assignments of Kathy and I's life. But he speaks to us over our assignments. And he puts us in the places that we need to. Whenever we accepted that pastorate in Muskogee, I still will never forget it. It took me the longest time to cell room, and we just looked at each other at the same time and said, it's time for us to resign. It's time for us to hand over this church. We had only been there 3-4 months at that point. It made no sense to us. We came back and we talked to our district overseer about it. And we still tried to press on, but the Lord kept telling us, no, it's time for you to go. No, it's time for you to go. So we were talked into a certain date that we were going to do our last Sunday. And I'll never forget, the Lord told us 8 days before that, or 9 days before that, hey, you know what? Nope, 2 days is your last service. Go ahead and pack up, load the U-Haul, you're gone. Excuse me, Lord? That makes no sense to me. So we did what we were called for. But He had a reason for it. Sometimes we don't understand it. I'll never forget, I had a lot of people looking at us saying, there's no reason for you to move up 7 days. It makes no sense. You need to do something else. No, I don't. God is the one telling me to do this. He's the one telling me and my wife to do this. So guess what? We're going to follow Him because He is our maker. And through that, I was able to be home for probably one of the most devastating days of my life when my dad passed away. Because otherwise, I would have been in a U-Haul truck driving from Oklahoma to Texas when it happened. He knows the assignments He has on your life. Don't let no one talk you out of it. If you are in prayer and you are in fasting and you're in this word and He tells you to do something, that's when you do it. That's exactly when you do it. You don't do it any other time, but in His timing. But as we're being watchful, we've got to be vigilant. Because the enemy is going to try to talk to us through whoever he can. And in a world that we're living in today, guess what? Man, there's a lot of voices, is there not? There's a lot of things that people say, a lot of things that people do that make no sense whatsoever. They try to condemn us for anything that we do. But you know what? It's the people that stand up for it that makes all the difference in the world. There's a new movement going around, and every time I see it, I tear up. And it's a black man that had started it. But I think it's called like Hugs for Freedom or something like that. But he just walks around giving people hugs. Because when we hug, there's a connection. There's something that brings us together. When we have that love for each other, that's what God has for us. He doesn't want us fighting. He doesn't want us doing all these other things, but the enemy does. I was sitting getting my hair cut this week, and my barber, I just sat down in the chair, and most of the time she just said, they'll ask you how your day is. You know how it is when you go get your hair done. It's time to talk about everything in the world but God. That's it. That's normally what it was. But I sat down in the chair that day, and she says, George, you're a minister, right? I said, yes. She said, I have a couple questions for you. And so I'll tell you what, man, I felt like I was on interrogation that day. But you know what? It's the fact that when people know that you're a Christian, they know that they can come to you with the hard questions. They know that they can come to you and ask you the things that makes no sense to them in this world that we don't understand. And whenever I left, she was in tears. She was happy because she finally got the answers that she had been looking for. And believe it or not, it led to Noah. She asked me point blank about stuff with him. But there's a time and a place that the Lord puts stuff in our head, because sometimes we have to dust the cobwebs off stuff, but because He had already had an assignment for me on this message, I was already brushed up and ready for her questions. Because that's the way the Lord works. He speaks through us. Just like we look at Moses, whenever the Lord told him, hey, you know what, you're going to deliver the Israelites. He said, me? This mouth? I can't do it. But the Lord used him and Aaron. He's going to be our helper. He sent the Holy Spirit down to us so that we have our helper at all times. No matter where we go, no matter what we're doing, no matter how we turn, no matter anything else, the Holy Spirit is with us. To talk with us, to talk through us, to talk in us, and to talk to people for us. Because when we're connected with Him, He knows. We need to be in season, or we need to be ready in season and out of season, the Word says. Everybody refers to that as people that'll get up to a pulpit and talk. But that's not the case. It's each and every one of us. Everybody has to be ready in season and out of season. Because when we're connected to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, guess what? He's going to use us. He's going to speak through us. He's going to send people to us so that He can get to them. And our assignments change. That's why we skipped ahead. We skipped in different areas. Our assignments change no matter what happens. There's little pieces that He has that'll take it from one area to the next area, from one problem to the next problem, from here to there. But we can't live off our old assignments. The other day I was watching a TV show and the dad on there was about to meet his daughter's boyfriend for the first time. And I'll never forget that he was sitting there and man, he was gearing up to be the big, hard dad. You're not going to mess with my daughter type thing. And all of a sudden, the boy walked in and he played football. Well, the dad played football for the same school. So what's it turn into? Hey, you know what? This is what I used to be. And we try to relive our past. Just like whenever I went down to Louisiana, I tried to relive the past of the tornadoes. It's not the time and the place. There was a time to talk about it while I was down there, to give them hope, to give them joy, to give them the ability to see ahead past the drywall or the wooded studs in the parsonage. To know that no matter what happens, it's not about the here and now, it's what's going to be in the future that matters. But all too often we look at our lives and we try to live it by looking at everything that happened back there. When we drive, we have a little bitty 6-inch thing that's up to our top right that's called a rear view mirror. And what it's connected to is about a 6-foot plate glass that's called a windshield. But what we try to do as we live life is we try to live in it by looking through the 6-inch square of everything that happened behind us. And if we do that, we're going to crash. We're not going to be able to live in the fullness that God has for our assignment if we're living on the things of the past, the assignments of before. If we as a church keep living on the assignments, and I was just as guilty of, I was living on the assignment of the tornado. But if I keep living on that, how am I supposed to exceed the pace with the new assignment that's been placed on side of River Life? There's no way we can do it. We can use it to further us. We can use it to give help to give encouragement because that's why we have a past. I guarantee you that I can't talk to people about drug use because I've never lived it. But someone that's had that past, guess what they can talk to someone about? They can give them hope. They can give them encouragement. That, hey, you know what? He can deliver you in one day, right here at the altar. He can do it. And there's others that say, you know what? It's a fight. Because you've got to give up things from your old life to be able to fall into those new assignments. You have to give up people. You have to give up things. I was listening to a message this week, and the pastor had said, look at the people around you, and that's what you're going to become. Look at the people around you, and that's what you will become. And it's so true, because all too often when we live around someone that does something, it's hard to convert them. It's easier for them to convert us because they have the enemy and they have all the world with them. But when we do it through the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and not of our own power, that's when we have the power to overcome that situation. But all too often when we put ourselves in those places, we're not on our knees and we're not anywhere with them. We have and on our knees to those situations and those places. It was rough. When I retired, it was a lot easier because I was already in the ministry and I had to shape whenever I needed it. But you know what? I still battle. I'm still human. All of us are still human. We're going to have the enemy come against us. The enemy knows he can't come against me with certain things, but trust me, he knows what to come at me with. He does. And he knows what to come against each and every person with. And the next thing is we've got to be confident in our assignment. Here's Noah. He's sitting on the ark. He says, you know what? I get an imaginary vision, but I came back. But when we act in line with the assignment we have destined, we will prevail. When we step out of our role and say, you know what? I know, God, you don't think it's time, but I think it's time. And we step out. Guess what? He's not going to let us fall, but he's going to leave us hanging. Because we have to wait for his timing. Because when we step out and it's not his timing, it's not right. That one person that he's trying to lead us to is not ready for us yet. He doesn't have something quite in motion quite yet. Because everything comes together for the good of God. But it comes together through his assignments, not our own. We have to be connected with him. We have to know that we know that we know that this is where he wants us and what he wants us to be doing. He has his assignments. He wants us to be confident in them. He wants us to know. And more importantly, when we finally grab hold, we can start walking in victory. That's when we know that it's time. That's that point that Noah finally got the clearance. You can go ahead and come up, Lance. That's the point that Noah finally got to the point to where he said, you know what? It's time for me to come out of this ark. It's time for me to do this because God told him in chapter 8, verse 15, it's time to come out of the ark. Bring you, your family, your kids. It's time for victory. And that's where we're at today. We don't have to look at that. Noah came out and he built an altar and he put all those animals out there, and he had packed his sacrificial lambs and all of his sacrificial clean animals. And he took and he laid that sacrifice down. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to go find a lamb to slay to be able to come to the throne room of God. Because Jesus came 2,000 years ago to give us that ability, to do it through Him. He came to this world that we might have the grace through Him. We have mercy through Him. We wake up in newness every day through Him. We wake up with a fresh anointing on us every day through Him. And it's the same way with our assignments. Whenever we finally grab hold of them, whenever we finally get to that place that we're at, that He says, you know what? This is the assignment I have for you. That's when it matters. And the nice thing is we have the Holy Spirit that speaks to us at all times through this. We don't have to have the Lord speak to us in a thunderous voice or anything like that. We have that still small voice that we long to hear, that we love to hear. I love to hear my wife talk. I really do. I'm glad that we're about to hit 20 years of marriage ourselves. But you know what? Above her voice is His voice. Above my mom's voice is His voice. There's been times my mom's looked at my assignments and said, son, are you nuts? She's told me, son, I am worried sick about you. How are you doing this? Because I'm not doing this. He's doing this. I haven't had to worry. I don't know how we've gotten the money sometimes, but guess what? We have. We haven't had to worry because He's our provider. When He gives us the assignment, He gives us the finances. When He gives us the assignment, He gives us the ability. When He gives us the assignment, He gives us the knowledge. But He doesn't do it just through thunder and lightning. He does it through prayer and steadfast worship. Because we have got to be in worship with Him at all times. If you could, just go ahead and stand to your feet real quick as I come to a close. As I've been preparing this week, the Lord kind of put a word inside of me that I put on my Facebook. And if you saw my Facebook yesterday, you probably saw this. But He said, when following God's fresh assignment on our life, we must not relive it through our past glory days. Each assignment is new and fresh. Live it anointed in the newness that King Jesus has in it for you. I don't know what assignments people are facing right now. I don't know the assignment that the Lord's placing on certain people in here today. But what I can say is that He has an assignment for each and every one of us. We may be at a point to where we have to be steadfast and we've just got to be prayerful over it. We may be at a point to where He's revealing it to you standing right where you're at today. Or He may have just completely finished it and now it's time for a new one. No matter where we're at, there's always something something to do with the assignment that He has. There's always a time and a place. There's always a reason and a purpose. Whether you're in a barber chair, whether you're sitting at the kitchen table, but there's a reason for your assignment. I don't feel led to do a big, huge altar call today. I don't feel led to do all the glitz and glamour, because you know what? It's not about me. It's about Him. What I do want us to do today, though, is to give Him the glory and the assignments that He has. I don't know if this was just for me today, or if it was for everyone, or if it was just for one other person. But what I do know is God has a purpose in the assignment that He's given to you. Because through your assignment, things will happen. I look back, I don't know why I never think about him, but it just came to mind. Martin Luther King. He was given an assignment that he walked in, and he changed the world. He has streets named after him in every city. But you know what? He lived in the assignment. And often people want to go back to that assignment, but that assignment's done. He has a new assignment for someone else. He has a new assignment for our next president, whoever that is. But it's not for anybody to fix but him, through the assignments that he gives people. So what I want us to do today, if you feel that you want to join together in our assignments that he has, then what I want us to do is just to come forward real quick, to join together and say, you know what, I know that there's assignments here for me. I know there's an assignment for someone else. But I want confidence in my assignment. I want newness in my assignment. If that's you,